good friend Steve Forbes. He has a book called Reviving America, and I think it'll be another blockbuster. Steve, it's good to have you back on the 700 Club. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Pat. Thank you.
Well, what's your take on the President's State of the Union, the whole idea of how he has brought Americans together, but yet he's sad that they're not closer than he wanted them to be? What do you think about that?
Well, I think the speech was really a trip to fantasy land. His description of the U.S. economy is not what most Americans experience in their paychecks. And his statements about how we're regarded abroad, about ISIS, I think just strike people as a man who is not in touch with reality. It's getting uglier out there, not better.
Well, what do you think, what's the record of history? I mean, sooner or later, history judges leaders, and they lead, every president of the United States gets the record in history sooner or later. How will history judge this one?
I think they're going to judge it as a massive disappointment, both domestically and in terms of foreign policy. America is weaker overseas. Despite what the president said about our military being strong, which it is, he has run it down, reduced the size of the Navy, reduced the size of the Army, not made the investments we need in new weapons technology. And we see the Middle East going through convulsions, which are now hitting our own shores and those of Europe, a massive refugee crisis. And on the domestic economy, this is the worst recovery from a sharp economic downturn in American history. We're 6 years, 7 years into a supposed recovery, and most Americans have seen their real paychecks shrink, not grow.
Steve, his signature accomplishment is what's called the Affordable Care Act. We know it as Obamacare. How would you change that? What would you do? Would you repeal Obamacare? And what would you put in its place?
Well, Obamacare, and we propose this in the book Reviving America, has to be repealed and replaced with a system, a gradual replacement with a system that is patient-oriented, where the patients are in charge. Today, it's all third-party payer. It's employers, it's government, it's insurance companies, and the patient takes last place. One little sign of where the patient really ranks in the healthcare system today is that even the crummiest motel in the world would never put you in a room with another person with the screen in between, as hospitals routinely do, nor would they give you a robe that looks like it was discarded from the Salvation Army. So we need a more patient-oriented system, and in the book Reviving America, we list reforms, starting with nationwide shopping for health insurance so that you get the policies you want, not what bureaucrats want, and having hospitals and clinics post prices for all their products and services and treatments so you can see where you get the best for your value for your money.
You've talked a long time, and I totally agree with you on the idea of a flat tax. The tax code is just a monstrosity. More pages in the whole Bible. What is your plan? How would the flat tax work?
Well, what the flat tax would do is just get rid of this corrupt tax code, which now runs more than 10 million words versus a little over 780,000 words in the Holy Bible, and replace it with a single rate system, generous exemptions for adults and for children. You'd have exemptions so that, for example, a family of four, the first $52,800 of income would be free of federal income tax, no tax on your savings, and no death tax. You should be allowed to leave the world unmolested by the IRS. And anything you earn above $52,000, that family, you'd pay only 17 cents on the dollar. Do the same thing on the business side, reduce the rate to 17, clean the code up. And this way, you could literally do your tax return on a single sheet of paper or with a few keystrokes on a computer. You know, we wouldn't have to spend 6 billion hours a year, which the IRS estimates that we spend filling out tax forms, spend $200 to $300 billion a year trying to comply with this monstrosity.
What would your plan do in terms of the economy? How do you see the outworking of it if it's put into effect?
Well, by enabling the American people to keep more of what they earn, simplifying the tax code so we can focus our brain power and productive work and innovations that get the economy moving, you'd see this economy roar like a rocket. Over 30 countries around the world have put in the flat tax. and it's worked very well. So this isn't a laboratory experiment. And it's a moral issue. If you add up, say for the last 20 years, all the tens of billions of hours we've spent filling out tax forms, the trillions of dollars we've spent complying with this tax code, and just think for a moment if that money and that brain power and that time had been spent on creating new products, creating new medical devices, new services, new cures for diseases, how much better our lives would be. So it's not just an economic issue, it's a profoundly moral issue. Let us focus our talents on productive things, helping each other, instead of this monstrosity we have to grapple with today.
You know, you've also been speaking with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has pushed interest rates to an obscenely low level. Savers have been killed over these last few years. And now the Fed's in a box because when they want to raise rates, they'll kill the economy. What would you do with the Federal Reserve Board?
Well, drastically downsize it and simplify it. You're right, it's become a corrupt institution, taking on massive new powers. And so what the Fed should do is allow real interest rates. Interest rates, as you know, is the price you pay for borrowing money. It's like the price you pay for renting an apartment or buying a gallon of gasoline. And when they suppress rates, and we explain this very simply in the book, Reviving America, when they've suppressed interest rates, what they've ended up doing is hurting not only savers, but loans to small and new businesses, which have grown hardly at all. And as you know, small and new businesses are the job creators in this economy. The other thing the Fed should do immediately is reduce the size of its bloated portfolio of securities that it's given itself, almost $5 trillion, so that money can start going back into the financial system to finance new and small businesses and the needs of households. And ultimately, Pat, we have to go to a gold standard. We had a gold standard for 180 years, first 180 years of this country's existence, and gold is like a ruler. It's like having 60 minutes in an hour or 12 inches in a foot. It worked. It's worked far better than what we have today, which is sluggish growth, a mammoth bureaucracy that is out of control and crushing new and small businesses.
This book, ladies and gentlemen, is called Reviving America. Steve, I want to ask you one last question. There are a lot of contenders for the presidency in the Republican Party and, of course, the Democratic Party as well. But are there any that would embrace the principles that you lay out in this book that you would point to?
Well, looking at the candidates, I almost feel like it's a dating game, finding virtues in each of the candidates. Ted Cruz, for example, gets it on the Federal Reserve and the need for a gold standard, as does Senator Rand Paul. Ben Carson's got a very interesting flat tax proposal, as does Cruz, Rand Paul, and some of the others. So they're coming our way, but the purpose of the book is to put pressure, give people the information they need to get candidates not only for president, but also for Congress and the Senate to do what's right. The big three reforms, repealing Obamacare and replace it with patient care, get rid of the IRS and have a genuine flat tax, and get the Federal Reserve to stop mucking around with the dollar so it can be stable and strong again. These three things, there are obviously a lot of other things we have to do, but these big three things, big three reforms, would rapidly revive America. This country's very strong. We've been through a very rough period, but I think with these kind of reforms, people will be surprised, pleasantly surprised, at how quickly America recovers.
Well, Steve, you're a brilliant thinker, and I appreciate all that you have done over the years to give us a more sound economy. I hope people will listen to you. It's called Reviving America. Steve Forbes, available wherever books are sold.